He believed it. You know, he knew he was smart, but you, the American consumer, well, the people are stupid, so therefore they need these people in the nanny state. That's why they regulate. They don't do it out of saying, well, I hate people, I want to hurt them. I want them to make them always safe. You know, this is why they have rules about, you know, FDA food and drugs and what you take into your bodies. And it's always, you know, for your best interest. I had a surprising incident occur a year or so ago. I was talking to one of my liberal friends that I was dealing with, and we were talking about the ridiculousness of the marijuana laws. Now, I'm really a poster child for marijuana since I've never seen anybody smoke this stuff. But I understand the politics of it. And so I was working with him, and we were talking about marijuana, and we agreed, and then we really had strong agreement, you know, on hemp. You know, the stupidity of outlawing hemp, you know, because it looks sort of like a marijuana plant. I understand if you have enough hemp the size of a telephone pole, you can make one joint. So it's dangerous stuff, and that's why we're not allowed to raise it in this country. But the other reason is that there were some people that didn't want hemp to be used in paper, so they wanted that they owned the lumber mills, so they wanted to sell lumber to make paper, so they made sure that you couldn't raise hemp. Cotton people don't like hemp either because it's much easier to grow, all these kind of things. But I thought he was a close ally, so the subject came up about federal government regulations on raw milk. Now, I thought,
well, be careful.
When people came to my office, I said, why is the federal government involved in raw milk? I said, you know, my natural tendency, don't you think an individual should have a right to drink raw milk if they want to? And I got together with my liberal friend who hated the marijuana laws and the hemp law. He said, oh no, we got to protect the people, they might drink bad milk. Now this crowd wouldn't allow that inconsistency. If you're allowed freedom, you're allowed freedom. You're allowed freedom to make your own mistakes. The most important thing is if you want your freedom, you get your freedom, you're allowed to make your own mistake. If you make an economic mistake or a mistake with your own body, don't go crawling to the government to go to your neighbor to take care of it. That's all. It doesn't work that way, but it's going to. You know, there's a lot of talk now about nullification, secession, getting rid of the Fed, and all these kind of things. A couple of TV stations totally nuts that it's even out there, and they have to ridicule and make fun of all this. But I think it's pretty amazing that 3 or 4 years ago, we wouldn't have had these conversations. Actually, on television, they're on the defense and saying, oh no, we don't want to have nullification. But you know, if it happens to be a liberal that can't stand the idea, you talk about states' rights and some of these things go to the states. I said, yeah, you mean that the state of California can't legalize marijuana? Sounds like a state's rights to me. No, this whole discussion, I think, is going very well. But it's going to provide an opportunity, the way I see it. You know, the country goes bankrupt, and we all suffer from it, and it could be chaos. But we have one thing you don't have to worry, and that is our freedom. If we have our freedom, we'll be back on our feet again, we'll work and take care of ourselves, and we won't be dependent on anybody else. Our troops will come home, there'll be a greater chance of peace in the world. And during this period of time, the laws will be nullified. And it just won't work. I mean, if they're just printing money and sending us money and it doesn't work, I mean, somebody else is going to have to depend on themselves rather than on the government. So there'll be de facto nullification. I think that'll happen. I don't think that anybody's going to have to write a law, anything. I mean, it'll be in their interest. But my goal is to try to get a transition, and I always have transitional programs. For instance, in medicine, government medicine's been around since the mid-60s, 1960s. And it's gotten worse, obviously, with Obamacare. But the key to it, to allow us, a And chance is to always have, they talk so much about the public option. How many times did you hear them chanting up there about the private option? That's what we need, is a private option. Always. Be able to get out of the system, whether it's in the medical care system, like if you're 65 and over, it's pretty hard to get out of the medical care system. You're forced into Medicaid, and that's why this new program is forcing everybody in, and you can't opt out. Education, I consider it essentially a disaster. Even though I went through public education, my kids went through public education, I still think public education is a detriment and a danger. And much has been, taught about bad economic policies and all. So, but in education, we still, so far, we still can have homeschoolers and private education, and that will help. If we get to our senses, we don't have to just take the key and turn it and shut it off and say, all right, new rules, nothing, the government just has to phase out. That's what will happen if we don't have a transition period, because if the money quits working, it's the end and it's sudden and it's catastrophic. But if you wanted transition programs for the Fed, you can just legalize competition, legalize the Constitution, legalize gold and silver. To legalize gold and silver on your own and use American gold coins and American silver coins. Now here it says $1, $50, let's use it. You go to jail for it. I mean, that's how determined they are to use force to make the Federal Reserve note, which is nothing, just a piece of paper, the only thing that you can use to pay your debts with. So if we have those options to get out of the system, I think it's always to some, it serves our interest. But with more problems, then I think that will just sort of explode, and the federal government can't keep up and do a whole lot about it. But then, who's going to pick up the pieces? That, to me, will be the question. And right now, I don't think we have enough people. I don't think we're in influential places enough, and I don't think we have the ammunition yet to do it. I think it's sort of what happened, in this last session of Congress, where everything keeps moving further, more government, more spending. We end up with an economic crisis that came from too much spending, too much borrowing, too much debt, and too much regulation. So there were a certain group of economists, the Austrian economists, predicted this chaos. There's a mess out there and it's going to explode. We're going to have a correction. So indeed, it did happen. Do you think anybody in the Fed or the Treasury went and asked the people who knew what was coming? Oh, you knew what was coming, and what do we do now? No, they didn't want to hear from them. But what they do is say, we know the answer. We need to spend more money, borrow more money, print more money, regulate more, and run up more deficits. It hasn't changed, but it has to change. We have to get this to change. I think two of the most important things, liberty is the goal. That's why it's Campaign for Liberty. But if you pick two issues where we need to change the minds of most Americans, it will be on the monetary issue. Money out of thin air is nothing but evil. The fact that they can print the money is what makes big government. It allows them to finance war and welfare and all the malinvestment. So, top of the list, end the Fed. And if you had the second thing that we should do is we should end our empire. We need to I think the two would give us peace and prosperity. I do not believe for a minute that our national security interests are served by us being around the world. Now, if we were involved in, if we got involved only in a proper manner, and that is with a declaration of war by the Congress, it would be a little bit of a help, but I'm afraid that even then they might get too much involved, because you still can make mistakes. But they're not interested in that. They want power to the executive branch to do this. And that is one of the biggest shortcomings in Washington, is neglected responsibility of Congress. Congress neglects their responsibilities to maintain order with the monetary order, the foreign policy. The president doesn't run foreign policy. The Congress is supposed to do that. There's no, the words of foreign policy is not even in the Constitution. The president's the commander-in-chief, is a war declared, but he's not to be able to run the world and start these wars and bomb countries that have done nothing. Those couple of things would be a big step in the right direction, but ultimately we need a sharp definition of what individual liberty is all about. We need to have more confidence in ourselves that freedom does work, that freedom is the answer to this, and if we do care about our future and our individuality, that is what we have to do. Freedom is something that is so delightful to see in practice, because it brings people together. People who have disagreements on lifestyles and disagreement on how to spend money, they can still talk to each other and be next door neighbors, because nobody's going to encroach on their personal liberties or on their economic liberties. And that is what is so magnificent about it. There were a few times in history, unfortunately not enough, where there was less government and foreign government intervention in the Middle Eastern countries among the Jews, the Christians, and the Muslims. And very often, matter of fact, even today, there are quite a few Jewish people that live in Iran, and nobody sits around worrying about this, But when they're left alone, they're much more likely to get together. But when outside forces come in, and when the Europeans redraw the lines, or the Americans redraw the lines and tell you that you have to do this, and we're going to support this dictator, and we're going to kill this dictator, and and then all of a sudden, the factions line up. Freedom really does bring people together. And this is what's, I think we should be encouraged by. We should be encouraged because the Campaign for Liberty is expanding. Not only our campaign, the official Campaign for Liberty organization, but the Campaign for Liberty around the country is growing. People are very unhappy, and they're looking and begging for answers. And we do have these answers. Far from perfect answers. One reason why we do believe in liberty is that we know we're imperfect. If we knew that we never made mistakes, and we knew what other people really wanted, then you could have a dictator. We won't make mistakes, and I know what you want. Freedom is dependent on the fact that I might make a mistake if I'm your government, and that I don't know what is best for you. So it's up to the people to make the decision, and the purpose of government is to protect that freedom of choice. It is because we come into our lives in a very special way. I happen to believe our lives come from a creator. But if you want to say it comes as a natural life, one thing for certain, our rights and our lives do not come from our government. That I give myself, so I give it to other people too, and that is when we come together and work hard, like this weekend. You'll come together, you'll meet new friends, you'll have new plans, that you better have some fun doing it, enjoy it, because we don't know what tomorrow will bring. I don't know what. People will say, well, are we going to save the Republic? Well, we'd like to, but maybe it's gone too far, maybe we can't restore it. But if we preserve the principles of liberty and let that evolve into something else, that's all that's really important, because it's liberty that promotes civilization. So we don't know exactly, but in the meantime, we should have some enjoyment. And being with like-minded people on the principles of liberty, regardless of how they want to spend their money or what they want to do in their life, that's irrelevant. So I advise you to have fun doing this, and I thank you very much for coming tonight.